Jim Knowles, the next defensive coordinator of Tennessee. The Volunteers are trying to finalize that as we speak, and why this is that home run hire Tennessee fans wanted.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Happy Thursday morning and welcome into Locked On Vols, your number one spot for Tennessee football news and entertainment. Weekday mornings when you wake up, free and available wherever you get your podcast. We are a part of Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day, the number one sports podcasting network available. And I am your host, Eric Cain, a member of the BallQuest.com team here in town and your host of this show. Today's episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL bets all season long. A big shout out to our friends over at FanDuel. A lot to discuss on this show here today. Breakout freshman of the year on offense, that's coming out. Some candidates there, that's coming out in segment number 3. In segment number 2, I'm going to play a conversation that I previously recorded earlier in the day yesterday before the news came out about Jim Knowles with Brian Rice, but there's a lot of good stuff in there that I do want to hit air that is still true. And so we're going to play part of that conversation in segment number 2 coming up. And, first here in segment number 1, we're going to talk about Jim Knowles. And again, I had previously recorded this show. And my focal point was Jim Knowles because the Jim Knowles chatter got pretty hot yesterday, okay? And so when I was breaking down the candidates, my candidate for today's show was going to be Jim Knowles. But I used a lot of language like, I don't know where it is, and, we'll see if it gets across the finish line, and, stuff like that. The Tennessee's defensive coordinator search. Well, again, Tennessee's working to finalize that right now, and maybe by the time this airs, it'll continue to be out of date as, VolQuest confirmed that Tennessee's working to finalize a deal with Jim Knowles that's out there by Pete Thamel and a bunch of other, national media members as well. So I had already kind of broke down like his stat line and kind of what he's did where. It's very impressive. So I salvaged that, much like I salvaged much of the conversation with Brian Rice. And I'm going to put some fluff here at the beginning because, again, I'm going to react to why this is such a big-time hire for Josh Heupel. A lot of behind-the-scenes kind of intertwines how I did the show here today. I know you guys don't care about that, but part of the business is a lot of times you record and it gets out of date, so you got to go back and do that. Jim Knowles, man, I think if you poll 10 Tennessee fans, 9 of them would say this is a home run hire, and then you'll get one that said, oh my gosh, he was awful at Penn State this year, pretty pathetic. Yeah, I mean, Penn State clearly that things didn't go right for Penn State this year. That's why James Franklin is no longer the head coach there. And you had Jim Knowles, who was making $3.1 million this year, not going to be retained by Matt Campbell coming over because Matt Campbell was going to bring his own guy. And so you had Jim Knowles that currently, I think part of the process to get it officially across the finish line, and assuming that's going to happen, is there's a pretty hefty buyout there. And there's going to be negotiations between Knowles and Penn State. I don't know how that works at this time, like if Tennessee gets involved in that regard. But since the head coach was fired and since you're not being retained, it's to the school to pay that separation payment, right? And so there's probably some negotiations going on there. But that's pretty hefty separation pay because, again, he was making $3.1 million as a coordinator with incentives and bonuses that could have got him close to $4 million if they had a pretty good year. They did not, obviously. But, man, what a big-time swing, what a big-time hire this will be once it gets to the finish line. Jim Knowles is 60 years old, and he has been all over the place. Penn State this year, 3 years at Ohio State with Ryan Day, 4 years at Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy, 8 years in Durham, North Carolina with David Cutcliffe. He was the head coach at Cornell, where he went to school and where he played for a couple years. He was with Cutcliffe again at Ole Miss in 2003. He spent time at Western Michigan as well. He has coached defensive line. He's coached linebackers. He's coached secondary. He's coached running backs. He's been recruiting coordinators. Again, he's 60 years old. He's a football lifer. He's been around the block several different times, played at Cornell, played defensive line, and now he's 60 years old. What I like about Jim Knowles is he has supported some of the best defenses in the country the past couple years. And for Josh Heupel, and I'll talk about this with Brian here in a moment, like Josh Heupel, this was a massive, massive hire for Josh Heupel because Josh Heupel is not on any type of hot seat right now. Okay. But 8-4, clearly that's not good enough here in Knoxville, right? And if you make the wrong hire, so many times we've seen you make the wrong hire, that's it for you as a head coach. You make one wrong hire and that's it, you're fired. Now, time will tell if this hire is the right hire or the wrong hire. So many times if we knew exactly that it was going to work out, then we would make sure that we make the right hire. But that's not how life works, right? History shows that teams with Jim Knowles being the defensive coordinator, being the defensive play caller, things turn out pretty well. You look at what he did with Ohio State that parlayed him into a $3.1 million defensive coordinator for Penn State. At Ohio State in 2024, the team that beat Tennessee in the college football playoff, number 1 ranked scoring defense in the country, 12.9 points per game. Number 1 in terms of total defense in the country, allowing 254 yards per game. They were the 3rd best defense in the nation against the pass, allowing 167 yards. They were the 3rd best defense against the run, allowing 87 yards. They were 2nd in the nation with 53 sacks on the year, and they averaged 1.2 turnovers per game. That was his best year easily as a defensive coordinator. In 2023, it was also very good at Ohio State. 11.2 points per game, which was 2nd in the country. That was actually 1 point better than what he did last year, or in 24. He allowed 265 yards on average. That was 3rd best in the country. The pass defense of allowing 146 yards per game was number 1 in the country. His rush defense ranked 29th, but it wasn't horrible. 119 on the ground, 28 sacks, and averaged a little less than 1 turnover a game, 1 takeaway a game. That was a very, very good year. You look at his last year at Oklahoma State in 2021. This rivals his best year of 2024. 18.1 points per game. That was 9th in the country. 298 yards. That was 5th in the country in terms of total defense. Pass defense, allowing 210 yards through the air. That was 36. Rush defense was top 5, 87 yards that year. They were number 1 in the country. Oklahoma State was in 2021 in terms of sacks in the season, 58.5. So that parlayed him into the Ohio State job. I didn't go back and look at his stuff at Duke or anything like that because I just wanted to about the last 8-year sample size, the last 3 stops that he's made, Penn State, Ohio State, and Oklahoma State. But I wrote down, I did a deep dive on all the numbers here. I mean, in this sample size, his defenses don't cause a lot of turnovers. Outside of 2 years, his defenses are very middle of the road in terms of sacks. But again, 1 year at 53 sacks, that's 2nd in the nation. 1 year at 58.5 sacks, that's number 1 in the nation. Another year in 2018, he had 42 sacks. That's really good. So they do a good job of getting after the quarterback. It's pretty good, guys. It's pretty good. And again, ultimately, we will see if this ends up being the right hire. Again, assuming you get it across the finish line and they finalize all the details and all that. But Tennessee, of course, is right there working to make him the next defensive coordinator. This is a very satisfying hire, I think, for the fan base. You wanted change, okay? And so many times when you demand change, and Brent Hubb says this all the time, it's not about who you fire, it's about who you hire. And so many times fans and some media members just demand change. You need to fire this guy. You need to fire this guy. You need to fire this guy. And then what's your solution? Oh, go get Peyton Manning. He's a VFL. Go get T. Martin. Gerard Mayo. He wants to come back. Former NFL coach, former NFL head coach, Gerard Mayo, to come back to his alma mater and coach defense. I don't think so. Oh, well, Tony Vitello don't want to go to the San Francisco Giants. What a lateral move. I mean, again, fan, I say it every show. Fan, short for fanatic, and that's fine. Man, I'm like that with my Atlanta Braves, okay? So, and before I put the journalistic hat on, I was like that a lot with Tennessee football. That's how it is. But so many times it's fire this guy, and then the next it's, oh, we'll go out and hire this guy, and it's unrealistic. It's very unrealistic. Josh Heupel kept this close to the vest, man. His circle was small. There wasn't a whole lot of information out there. We started hearing some some Jim Knowles chatter a little bit on a Wednesday, mainly from the Penn State side. Obviously, there's a buyout there they're trying to negotiate for that separation pay. But starting to hear a little chatter about Jim Knowles on Wednesday, late morning, if you will. And then it turned into, well, he's going to be Tennessee's next defensive coordinator, assuming they get across the finish line. This is one of those home run hires, in my opinion. okay? But nothing's a sure thing in life. Jim Knowles has had some of the best defenses in all the country his last, couple different stops. Sure, it wasn't fantastic this year at Penn State, but nothing's ever a sure thing. You just signed a coordinator that has coordinated a lot of different defenses. His base is a 4-2-5, which is the base of, we talked about on yesterday's show, that pretty much every team playing football, college, NFL, high school employs right now, because you've got to have backers that can run sideline to sideline. You got to have 5 defensive backs on the field in nickel personnel, and you got to have defensive linemen that can get after the quarterback with your 4-man front. He employs a 4-2-5, but you got a coordinator that has given Tennessee issues. You have a coordinator that has been in the college football playoff, has won Big Ten championships, has been a head coach before, and has coached a number of different levels on the defense side of the football and offensively as well. I just, of the pool, and I know a lot of people wanted Ryan Walters, and I was impressed with Ryan Walters, and you can make the case for any of the names we're throwing around there. There were certainly a lot of positives for a lot of different people, but of all those groups, of all the names that were on the hot boards, outside of maybe like Will Muschamp, because Will Muschamp's been a head coach in this league twice, and he's coordinated some of the saltiest defenses in this league the last 20 years or whatever. Jim Knowles was kind of like okay, that'd be great, but not that it's not realistic, but like, is Tennessee really going to get that big of a hire? Like, that was the upper echelon of potential hires, in my opinion. And Josh Heupel went to work. And he got it done. It looks like he's about to get it done. So anyway, by the time this episode airs, maybe it's final, maybe Tennessee announces it, but that's kind of where we stand right now. And I had to go back and do a hard edit for this show because I'd already recorded it once. So if you hear me say in the segments to come, like, we'll look at Tennessee defensive coordinator search tomorrow, that's an edit that I forgot to take out. Or, I think later on I'll talk about the freshman, and I'll talk about Braylon Staley and how he just completely missed out on the all-SEC teams, and I say something like, oh, well, I'm sure he'll be on the all-freshman team. Well, it was also announced, after I recorded, that he's the SEC Freshman of the Year, so well-deserving. So sometimes that happens, but we'll continue to talk about Jim Knowles on tomorrow's show. We'll get guests on to break him down. We'll look specifically at the numbers, what this could mean with the personnel that Tennessee has, and more. Good day. Good hire. Job well done. Josh Heupel gets a check mark for this. What comes of it, we'll find out. But this was a good hire for Tennessee and for Tennessee's Josh Heupel. When we come back, we'll talk with Brian Rice. I salvaged a lot of that conversation because he said a lot of good things about Tennessee's defense, what needs to happen, the style of play for Jim Knowles, all that and more. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aurora Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's the way you share memories. Because Aurora isn't just your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos, endless uploads for pictures and 30-second videos throughout the Aurora app. Add a personalized message right before the personalized message inside the frame, so the gift feels thoughtful in the moment it is open. I'm telling you, we have one at home. We have like 200 pictures of our little boy on there. Every time I walk by it, I literally just stop and I just stare, and I sit down and I watch it. And I look down at the clock, like, oh, I've been watching for 10 minutes. I kid you not, like, it's sappy parent here, but like, it means something to me. It means something for my parents, for my grandparents. We all have one. My sister has one. We all share as well. I can load pictures and it can go to my mom's frame. Like, it's really, really cool. It's one of the perfect things you can gift this holiday season. So check it out today and make it a Christmas gift. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting AuroraFrames.com. $35 off at Aurora's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That is AURAFrames.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames will sell out, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions, they do apply. As I said previously, I'd already recorded a conversation with Brian Rice of 99.1 The Sports Animal and the voice of the Lady Vols, co-host of the EA Show, talking about the ongoing defensive coordinator search. We recorded. Hours later, reports are out that Tennessee's really channeling in on Jim Knowles. But I saved a lot of the conversation because Brian says a lot of good things. So I'm going to lead you into this expanded clip where I kind of chop a lot of things together. I start off with how big of a hire is this coming up for Josh Heupel? What's it mean for him, for his coaching pedigree? How attractive is the job now compared to where it was in 2021? And what he wants to see in terms of style of play for the Tennessee defense moving forward, with a little bit of Lady Vol talk on the back end. Here's salvage conversation with Brian Rice from that we recorded yesterday. How big of a hire is this going to be for Josh Heupel, who clearly has done a lot of good here at Tennessee, but heading into year 6, this feels like a massive hire for the head football coach?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a massive hire for Tennessee, and it's a massive hire for Josh Heupel, because when you're looking at his future, look, I don't think it's realistic for Josh Heupel to be on a quote-unquote hot seat. But it's massively important to get the right person in this particular search at this particular time, because we've seen very quickly in the SEC that because of how high the expectations are in this conference, you go from you're just fine, everything's fine, to on the hot seat pretty quickly. And if you look back at the numbers this year, if you have a defense that's 10th in the conference in conference games instead of 14th, you win 2 more games and you're in the college football playoff in all likelihood. If you have a top half of the league defense like you did last year, then you're definitely in the college football playoff and you're in the 11-1 discussion. So I think it's crucial because your offense is always going to cook. And in the year where you had your worst offense, you made the college football playoff because your defense was not elite, but it was very, very good. And all you need it to be is very, very good. Now, you should lean into the idea that we're also going to have an elite defense, because then you're in the we go undefeated type of talk. But realistically, you need to try to be in the top half, shooting for elite. And that's why this is an important hire. And you can't just elevate somebody, in my opinion. You have to go get somebody. And is it somebody that you have a relationship with? There are a couple of good names there. Or is it somebody who you have just been impressed by when you watch their defenses on film? And you're going to have the budget to go do that, because Tim Banks is making $2.1 million. That's, I think, a realistic budget, if not beyond that, to get the person that you want, the right person, not just any person. Yeah, I think there are 2 things that come into play here. One is Josh Heupel has years of proof of concept at this point where this offense works at this level. You're not worried about it being a 1 or 2 year flash in the pan and then everybody's getting fired. So that's one. Stability in the program, the perception that the offense is always going to be good, which can cover up some issues that you may have as you put in your defense. Number 2 is the state of college football as a whole. College football has evolved from defense first to offense first, at least in this small time period we're in. Now, teams like Indiana, Ohio State are playing elite defense. Georgia's playing elite defense. But if you look at their numbers, yards given up, compare it to 10 years ago, they're giving up a lot more yards than the elite defenses were then. And that's part of how the game's evolved. So I think when you put it into, all right, I'm going to go coach defense opposite of Josh Heupel's offense. That was a scary proposition for a defensive coordinator who was worried about his long-term coaching future. It's not now. Tim Banks, before his big year, very nearly got the Middle Tennessee State job as a head coach. That was coming off his defense as just being okay. Now, he ultimately didn't get that job. But then he had his best defense, and then he had his worst defense. I think coordinators that are confident in their abilities look at the offense and say, yeah, it's going to put my defense in some bad situations sometimes. I'm going to have to find a way to rotate more guys, and maybe that's my strength, maybe that's not. But I think overall, this is an attractive job. But I look at this roster, and I say, we've got some guys. I look at this coaching staff and say there's a couple of guys that anybody should want to keep, at least one. But how do we get them to turn the page, to be tougher? And I think that's one question that if I'm a defense coordinator, I have for Josh Heupel in the interview process is, how physical am I going to be allowed to be? How physical are we going to be in practice? Because that's not a one-way street. The defense can't be physical while the offense isn't. Mm-hmm. Because when I look at this Tennessee team, if I'm doing the deep dive that I do as media, but if I'm doing that deep dive as a coaching candidate, I'm saying this team didn't look very tough on film. Am I going to be allowed to instill toughness? And if the response is, well, we're going to do it, then I don't want the job. So Josh Heupel, who I think is a very tough-minded individual as a person, is going to have to make that slight shift in his football mentality, and I think a defensive coordinator will help that. I want to see aggressive and physical. I think at times Tim Banks' defense was too aggressive from a we're going to go get the quarterback standpoint. And they didn't have a good backup plan for what if we don't get to the quarterback? If he gets that throw off, is the tight end or the running back that he throws it to going to run for 20 yards? So I want aggressiveness throughout the defense that, okay, you're going to give up some big plays from time to time, but you're not going to give up a big play every time you fail to get to the quarterback. So I want to see aggression, but mostly I want to see physicality. When you look, and here's where it really hit me. I don't think I appreciated enough watching college football as a whole this year. But when you watch conference championship weekend, every one of those teams could hit. Every time an Ohio State defender hit an Indiana offensive player and vice versa. Every time a Georgia defender hit an Alabama running back or receiver. Every time an Alabama defensive player hit a Georgia running back or receiver. They didn't break a tackle. They were sure tackled. The running back or the receiver wasn't falling forward. They were having a collision and it stopped there. And that is why those teams are playing on championship weekend. That's why 3 of those 4 teams are 3 of the top seeds in the college football playoff, because they're physical, they hit, teams don't break tackles on them. That means they have good fundamentals and good physicality. I think when Tennessee passes the eye test, and Tennessee's first and second year players pass the eye test of clearly the strength and conditioning program is getting them in physical shape to be physical, now they need to go do it. And I think that's the shift that has to be made. Does that start with strength and conditioning? I have no idea, because I don't know what they do. Clearly, what they're doing in that realm is getting them ready physically to play, but it doesn't seem to be getting them ready to play physically.
Lady Vols right now 6-2 here in the early season. Just got back from the West Coast where they took on Stanford, got a win, came up short against UCLA. What have you seen so far in the early going, of course, as they try to kind of figure themselves out? Lost arguably the best player, from the team a couple of weeks ago before the season, or just as the season was starting. What have you seen here in the early going for the Lady Vols? What's that next step for them as they try to figure out who they are before jumping into conference play?
I think the biggest thing they have to continue to do is play together and play faster together. It works at some times and at other times it doesn't. And then this is an obvious one in basketball, but you've got to make shots. And they aren't making shots. They're taking some good shots and they're not making all of them. It's getting in the gym. It's being a little more sure-handed with your passes. But the defense is starting to work the way it needs to. You forced 30 turnovers against Stanford last time out. You still only won the game by 3 at the end. You needed a runner from Talijah Cooper and then a free throw to seal it. That offense cooking has to get there because the defense is cooking. You got to finish when you have opportunities, and then you've got to hit the open shots because they are doing a great job of getting the ball to the open player for a good look. They've got to knock him down. If they do that, you're going to start running away with games. But I like what Kim Caldwell did with the schedule. If you look at quad 1 wins, quad 2 wins, all of that, it's very comparable to last year. But the schedule itself, when you've watched it play out, is not comparable. You've played Power 4 teams. You've played the kind of teams that you're going to see in the SEC. You've played the kind of team. Stanford's a team that you're going to meet in a 4-5 or a 3-6 matchup to go to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. That's huge. I think it was important for Tennessee to see how far away they were from UCLA. A couple of things in that game go differently, and you're in a 4-quarter game with them. They didn't go differently. They got punched in the mouth, and at different times they didn't respond very well. And I think that was very important for Tennessee to see. I think they'll grow more from the UCLA loss than they will for anything if they're doing it properly. And I saw that firsthand watching them practice every day between UCLA and Stanford when we were out in California. I'm the guy that goes to practice every time we go to practice. I want to see it. And I saw that growth, and you saw it in the Stanford game. It still needs to get better. And I think finals and a lot of practice between then and this next game against Winthrop and then a trip to Brooklyn to play Louisville, I think is going to be the big next step in this program's development.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. I think Brian said a lot of good things that still worked even though I had to chop a few things of that out, but still worked about what the expectations are here at Tennessee for the Tennessee defense, what he wants to see moving forward, and plus a little bit of talk about the Lady Vols and kind of where they are right now for Kim Caldwell's program. Hey, when we come back, let's take a look at some of the breakout freshman of the year candidates on Tennessee's offense. I give you 4 names as we conclude our show here on a Thursday, Lockdown Vols. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. The receiver gets hot, the defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment as the live spreads and money lines, they adjust accordingly. They adjust instantly. Player props update as those guys start to heat up in the second half or maybe get off to a hot start. You can bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Everything to keep you locked into every snap, every drive, every different possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast and so can you. Basketball season's here right now. Futures, what's Tennessee's record going to be in SEC play? You can check all that out at FanDuel Sportsbook as well. FanDuel, it's where the game moves fast and so can you. As we do at the end of every regular season, we start to do that postseason content. Let's look back, who performed well, best positions, all that and more. And we do that throughout the month of December, really, because, the transfer portal is not open yet. We did talk about what positions of importance for Tennessee to attack in the portal. We'll continue to do that as well. But today I wanted to look back at some freshmen, some rookies on the offensive side of the football and who stood out, had good years, and are poised for big careers here at Tennessee. We'll start with a couple of true freshmen. I added some redshirt freshmen on here as well because they deserve some praise. We'll start with, obviously, the 5-star plus offensive tackle in David Sanders. He played in 8 games, started the final 5. He was going to be a day one starter for Tennessee, but an injury on the week of the opener kind of sidelined him. He was a game-time decision leading into the opener, couldn't go, ended up missing the first 4 games of the season. But David Sanders did exactly what everybody thought he would do when he was healthy. I mean, he was an instant impact player, stepped in, and he was Tennessee's starting right tackle. Now, there were some lessons learned along the way. He looked like a freshman at times, and that's normal, especially in this league in the Southeastern Conference. But he overall had a pretty solid year, all things considered. 425 snaps played. He had the 3rd highest graded offensive lineman on the team at 67.2 by Pro Football Focus, trailing only Wendell Moy and Lance Hurd. His best game in SEC play was against Alabama on the road. He graded out at 74 on 49 snaps. He allowed 2 sacks on 231 pass blocking reps. He allowed 11 pressures, 8 quarterback hurries. Sanders' pass blocking grade of 68.8, according to Pro Football Focus, was the second best on the team behind Jesse Perry's at 71.6. So David Sanders, good start, looking for big things, of course, from his career. Let's go to the tight end position. I love Tennessee's tight end options moving forward. Ethan Davis, Deson Brame, and the guy I'm talking about right now is Jack Van Dorselaer. He was more physically ready to help now compared to Deson Brame, and Brame got some run there towards the end, which was good. But Van Dorselaer was ready to kind of help contribute right now. He had a defensive line background in high school, hand in the dirt, physicality, kind of further along in that regard, and he made a big impact as a true freshman. Not really receiving the football, 5 receptions, 23 yards, and a touchdown, but he played in all 12 games. He had 180 offensive snaps. In conference play, Van Dorselaer logged 31 snaps in the win over Arkansas, tallied 4 games of 10 or more snaps in SEC play as well. So especially when Miles Kitselman was out or when Ethan Davis was out as well, Van Dorselaer was called on a lot in 12 personnel, came in, made some key blocks in the win against Mississippi State on the road out of 12 personnel. Jack Van Dorselaer did a good job in his debut season for Tennessee. Quickly, let's talk about a couple of red shirts here. Braylon Staley. How can we not talk about him? Yes, he was a true freshman last year, but he redshirted. So this year, redshirt freshman, I'm counting him in this regard. How he was not all conference for the coaches just baffles me. Let's see here. He was he finished 6th in the Southeastern Conference with 806 yards off 64 receptions to go along with 6 touchdowns. 64 receptions led Tennessee. That was the 3rd most in the conference, the 2nd most by any freshman in FBS. His 806 receiving yards were the most among any freshman in the conference and were the 2nd most in FBS. Same for his 6 touchdowns, which led all SEC freshmen and was the 4th best among FBS freshmen. So all that to say, he was one of the best freshmen, not only in the Southeastern Conference, but in the entire country. Whenever the all-freshman teams come out, he should be on that, no doubt about that. Graded out at 70.1 on the season, according to Pro Football Focus, played 696 snaps. He had 2 100-yard performances against Arkansas and Kentucky. He had a couple other showings where he was just shy of 100 yards, 95 yards against Syracuse, 97 yards against Georgia, 92 yards against Alabama. He found the end zone twice in games against Oklahoma, once against Syracuse, Georgia, Alabama, and New Mexico State. Braylon Staley was really, really good for Tennessee this year. The final freshman I want to highlight that I think broke out this year on the offensive side of the football is another redshirt, and his name is Jesse Perry. Joey Aguilar, Deshaun Bishop, Jesse Perry, one of the best stories really in SEC, for Tennessee for sure, but it's a story that's going to get overlooked. Well, I say all that to say, he won a state title 2 years ago for a team that ran the football 99% of the time. They didn't pass block, right? They taught it, they repped it, but they were a running football team. You get to Tennessee and you essentially have to learn how to pass block. And he redshirted last year, went through it. I mean, he's always looked physically ready to play, but he kind of had to learn it a little bit. Came in, won a job in fall camp, and then his versatility was on display when David Sanders couldn't go. Jesse Perry was going to start the season at right guard. They had to bump him out to right tackle, and they had to bring in Shami Marov and play him at left guard, and then flip-flop Wendell Moy from left guard to right guard. So his versatility allowed Tennessee to get the best 5 out there on the field at one time. He played a right tackle. He played a right guard. Played in all 12 games, 695 snaps this year. 4th highest graded offensive lineman at 66.4. He boasted the best pass blocking grade of any Tennessee starting offensive lineman at 71.6. And he had logged 411 snaps at right tackle and 284 snaps at right guard. Jesse Perry, his versatility, his emergence was really, really cool to see for the University of Tennessee this year. So those were some of the breakout performers I had on offense this year for Tennessee. What about defense? Maybe we'll get into that tomorrow, but we will get into it here. Fun show. Hectic show a little bit because of all the edits. Hopefully it flowed well and you guys didn't really notice much outside of me saying it 17 different times. Appreciate you for being here. We will really continue to dive into Jim Knowles stuff and, wait until it's official for Tennessee and see what Josh Heupel has to say about the hire and all that. But national media members, Chris Lowe on 3, VolQuest confirms Tennessee is working to get this, at the time of this recording, to the finish line and make him the next defensive coordinator for the University of Tennessee. We'll continue to dive into this on tomorrow's show and look ahead to what's to come here in the month of December before the transfer portal opens. All that and more coming up on Friday. Locked On Vols. Until then, have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.